The good news? Somehow you landed Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, and Terry McLaurin all on the same team on draft day. The bad news? Well, you already know the bad news. You got smoked in week 1. Don't worry, it's a long season. Week 2 is already here. Let's figure out which wide receivers you want to start and which ones you don't. Now, these players, regardless of last week, are must starts in your lineup. Malik Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, Brian Thomas Jr., Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, Justin Jefferson, and Drake London if he plays. You know what? Let's start with Terry McLaurin, the Commanders, taking on the Packers on Thursday night, first game of week 2. So we got Terry, who did a lot of nothing. You got Debo, who, dare I say, we got the old Debo back.
Yeah, I don't know if we got the old Debo back, but I was talking about it all week. If you watch streams, even on the videos, I said hey, I'm not feeling good about Terry this week. I think it could be a better Debo week, but I feel a bit better about Terry this week. You look at it, he is very good targets per route run and yards per route run versus zone, and the Packers were the second heaviest zone last week, and last year they were the second heaviest across the season. I think this is going to be a bounce back for Terry McLaurin. I'm not expecting a big game, but I think he'll be solid. Because of that, I think Deebo Samuel, he'll still be involved. I'm not saying to sit Deebo Samuel, but don't expect what we got last week. But I still think Deebo a solid flex option.
Well, you nailed it with Terry last week. Not a good matchup against the Giants, but should be better this week. Gonna find it hard to bench him. May not be his biggest game, but let's say he should be solid, so I'll probably put him back in my lineups. And as far as Deebo, again, I'm not saying he's gonna come close to recreating what he did a couple of years ago, but sometimes players find new ways to be motivated, new team, playing to prove that he earned that contract or for a new contract. They fed the ball to him. They gave it to him in the backfield. This is glimpses of the old Debo in terms of usage. I like what I saw. I think he's solid. Why not take it a step further? Look, you're setting your picks on underdog for week 2. Debo right now, 4.5 receptions. Look, he had 7 last week. He doesn't even have to come that close. I think he'll do it again. They're giving the ball in creative ways. So I'm taking the higher. And by the way, if you haven't tried underdog, make an account, use code ENDGAME when you sign up. You can take this pick and pair it with a free pick that you get. And plus, new customers still, if you play $5 towards anything, you get $50 in bonus funds added to your account. That's on top of the deposit match and bonus funds they already give you just for using our code ENDGAME when you sign up, plus a special pick. Try it out now. Now, the Packers receiver room is exactly what you remember from last year. It's kind of a mess. All right, so let's start with the rookie, Matthew Golden. First game, to be expected. He wasn't going to be a huge factor. Does he step up this week? And then what about Jaden Reed, who, he didn't look too injured.
No, he scored a touchdown, but what did he have, 3 catches outside of that? Really, what's the upside for any of these guys right now? I still think Golden long-term will pull away, but we got to remember, this is only his second NFL game. You can't expect these guys to come in and just be awesome right away. Some guys need time. I think Golden's going to need time. These guys are all flexes. Jaden Reed only played 52% of the snaps last week because he's only out there in 3 wide receiver sets. You can flex these guys if you want, but they're all very risky, and if they don't score, probably going to kill you.
Yeah, Jaden Reed, healthy, not healthy, he's probably never going to be more than a risky flex because the risk is always that he does nothing, but he could always score. So flex it is. Golden, it's going to take time. I think it's going to take a lot longer than we'd like. Green Bay was one of the heaviest in terms of neutral game situation and run play percentage. Exactly what I thought. They're going to establish the run with Jacobs, pass if needed. And Matthew Golden saw one of the lowest first read target percentages out of all starting receivers last week. It's going to be a process. I'm just going to sit him. All right, Giants at the Cowboys. Look, no matter how bad the Giants offense looks, you still have to start Malik Neighbors, and no matter how many passes he dropped, you still got to start CeeDee Lamb. What about Wan'Dale Robinson on the Giants, who is probably the only guy even worth mentioning?
I don't want to start Wan'Dale Robinson. Okay, you can always, he's got a floor. Is this what I'm going for? Just a 10-point, 11-point floor? All the throws were outside the numbers last week. There was nothing across the middle. I'm not starting Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, I know the ceiling's nice. Look, Wan'Dale does have some juice. He could take one to the house. We've seen him do it before. He's the number 2 receiver here. I got to at least put him as a flex in PPR. Now, on the other side, we were pretty greatly disappointed by George Pickens in week 1. Didn't think Quinton Mitchell would shadow him quite that much. He's not going to get a shadow, but this is still a pretty tough Giants secondary.
It's a tough Giants secondary, but they played the 8th most cover 1 last week, and Pickens 0.35 targets per out run versus single high last year, 0.18 versus 2 high. Last year, the Giants had the 3rd most single high on the entire season. I think this is actually a good spot for Pickens. I'm not going to go overboard here and be like, he's a must start or anything, but look, even with that Mitchell shadowing him, if he had caught that long pass, he would have had an okay game. I think he can do better this week. I think he can at least be solid.
It's definitely a better matchup than last week, but here's the other side of it is I just don't think they're going to have to pass nearly as much as they did to keep pace with the Eagles. We knew that the Cowboys could put up points just because of the matchup. It's the Giants. I mean, come on, look, Pickens could come out with a big play. I still feel like he's kind of a risky flex here because the Giants don't necessarily give up a lot of points while they're not scoring them. I don't know, we got the Seahawks at the Steelers. I guess a revenge game for DK Metcalf. All right, but look, let's get to the Seattle side first. This was all JSN. And when I mean all JSN, it's like he's the only receiver that existed to Sam Darnold. Did Cooper Kupp even play? I'm not sure.
He played. I saw him out there a couple times, but this has got to be a strong matchup. I mean, I talked about it. I didn't talk about it on the start sit video because I didn't have the data yet, but if you were with us on the streams, I was telling everybody, start Garrett Wilson this week. This is a great matchup for him. Steelers play the most single high. They play a ton of cover 3. They give up the most points to outside wide receivers, and Garrett Wilson went off. And you might think, well, JSN's a slot wide receiver. Not anymore. He played 63% of his snaps on the outside last year, and he was much stronger against single high than 2 high. JSN's going to smash again this week. Strong start.
Just based on the way he was used last week, you've got to have him as a strong start. He's borderline must start. He's going to get anything close to that type of volume, and Cooper Kupp is still not relevant and still doesn't need to be started anywhere. Now, on the other side, what about DK Metcalf? Not a bad debut, but especially not bad for Aaron Rodgers. Can he actually keep this up?
Well, this is what worries me a little bit for DK Metcalf. I mean, yeah, it wasn't a bad debut, but Aaron Rodgers had a monster game, and DK Metcalf was just kind of okay. And one of his catches was actually deflected by Sauce Gardner, hit his teammate, and then fell back into his hand. So he really should have had an even worse game. Now, this is certainly a better matchup than last week against Sauce. But Riq Woolen, I mean, look, I know Riq Woolen, gave up the game-winning touchdown by trying to get that interception, and he'll do that sometimes. But he was shutting down these wide receivers for most of the game until that final drive there. This is another tough matchup for DK Metcalf. 49ers defense looked good. I'm only going to say a flex this week.
Appreciate the shout out for Woolen, UTSA alum. You're right. He actually did pretty well most of the game. Look, DK Metcalf, all right, not too bad so far. I'll say I'm sort of going to be encouraged here. I think I can move him up to a solid start this week. And as far as Calvin Austin, I talked about him as a potential waiver wire pickup, so I think he's at least worth a flex because he's the number 2 guy here. They're going to pass it a fair amount, so he's got that big play upside. There's still plenty more players to talk about. Quick reminder, you got questions, you don't have to wait for our live streams. We'd love to see you on there, but don't forget about Draft Lane. You can ask us questions anytime on the app. Just go to the little conversation tab, ask away, start sit, trade, waiver wire, and more. All right, next up, we got the Rams at the Titans. I think Puka Nacua pretty much solidified the fact he's a must start. Now, Devontae Adams, not nearly the target share, but I guess his debut as a Ram wasn't too bad.
No, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I mean, he only had a few less targets than Puka. He actually ran more routes. And the Titans played a ton of zone last week, and that's good for both these guys because both Puka and Adams actually had higher targets per out run and yards per out run rates versus zone last year than man coverage. So this is a much better spot for Devontae Adams than he had last week because Puka Nacua, it might surprise you, played almost half his snaps from the slot last week, highest of his career. Adams was stuck on the outside going against Stingley Jr., who's one of the best corners. The Titans don't have anybody like that. L'Jarius Sneed is fine, but he's not on that level. I think Adams is going to be just fine this week. Solid start.
Yeah, we were being cautious with Adams last week, and rightfully so. I think he's solid this week. One thing is, though, might have to temper expectations with Puka out there. And Puka not only a ton of receptions, but He was one of the leaders in first read targets. Stafford's just going to go to him whenever he's open, or maybe even when he's not open. So Adams is now clearly the number 2. Unlike last year with the Jets, and Aaron Rodgers was forcing the ball every chance he got, and Garrett Wilson was kind of clearly the number 2 here. So Adams is still a very solid receiver, could make some big plays. So I think this week in this matchup, yeah, he's solid. All right, we were all the way out on Calvin Ridley last week. He got the Surtain shadow, and you see why. He's not getting that this week, so where does he fall?
I like Calvin Ridley this week against the Rams. Rams ran the 4th most single high coverage. You look at it last year, 0.12 targets per route run versus 2 high, 0.34 versus single high. That's a massive difference. We're going to see the Calvin Ridley I talked up all offseason this week. I'm not going to go overboard. I'm not going to say strong start or anything like that, but I think he's a solid start, but one of my favorite solid starts.
Well, I kind of mentioned this talking about Tony Pollard in the RB video. It's not Ridley. That's the issue. It's not the matchup. It's just the offensive whole, really mainly the offensive line. I mean, look, I get Cam Ward's going to take time, right? But I think he could do a much better job if he actually had any time to throw. I'm worried about the state of that O-line right now. The Rams don't have any really good corners. In fact, I don't think any of their corners even graded out as a top 40 player in week 1. But they have some really good safeties that are going to prevent the deep ball. I mean, you saw Nico Collins did nothing last week. So I think Ridley's just a flex for now. All right, now let's talk Bills at Jets. Buffalo put up a ton of points. And you know what? We may have a new player emerging here. So Khalil Shakir was involved, but Keon Coleman, I haven't actually gone back to check. Pretty sure that was the best game of his career. So what are you doing here?
I liked what I saw from Keon Coleman in week 1. It wasn't just, like deep shots, highlight, contested catches. No, they were using them all sorts of different ways. I think maybe we're going to see a year 2 breakout from Keon Coleman. Now, the downside here is he's probably going to get the sauce treatment because we know Khalil Shakir mostly plays in the slot. But that being said, he's got Josh Allen. He's got upside. I'm going to say a flex, like a bit risky, but also like kind of a boom bust flex, right? Like he could have a big game. He could get shut down, but he could have a big game. And then Shakir, he was okay. Shakir's always kind of just okay. He's a flex.
Yeah, I think both these receivers are flexes for completely opposite reasons. Shakir, gets you something. Could have a good game, but probably not a great game. And Coleman, like you said, I need to see more than one game. I'm not going to jump in yet, but I can't say he's not at least flex worthy based on what we saw in week 1. Now, that was a shootout. This game shouldn't be a shootout, but then again, the way the Jets defense looked last week, maybe it will be. That said, in that Jets offense, there's still only one receiver worth mentioning here, and it's Garrett Wilson. That was pretty much as good as I could have hoped for, especially against the Steelers.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, you got to feel good about Justin Fields. You got to feel good about Garrett Wilson. I don't want to go overboard yet. It's only week 1. We don't want to overreact, and it is still the Bills. I know Zay Flowers had a nice game, but it's still the Bills. I'm going to say solid start for Garrett Wilson, though. Very solid.
I'm going higher than that. He's a strong start. The only reason I was kind of waiting, I wanted to see how did Justin Fields look in this offense. He looked amazing. Honestly, he looked great. He was on point. And, of course, he's getting the ball to Garrett Wilson as much as possible. And this matchup is much better. That Buffalo, I mean, you saw what Zay Flowers did. I don't want to go too crazy on Garrett Wilson, but I've got to start him this week. As good as those offenses were, well, now we got a different story. It's the Patriots at the Dolphins. All right, well, let's start with the Pats. Got Stephon Diggs there in the mix, and all of a sudden, Kayshon Boutte is in the mix as well. In fact, he led the team, was one of the leaders in the entire NFL in terms of receiving yardage. Do we have something here with Boutte?
I think we do. I think we have something with both these guys. Again, I'm trying to figure out, are the Dolphins just this bad, or are the Colts going to surprise us? But the Dolphins defense just allowed Danny Dimes and the Colts to score points on every single drive on Sunday. Every single drive. Like, come on, really? Are the Dolphins, are they even trying right now? I don't even know. Like, Stephon Diggs, I think, is solid. Like, he has a floor, not a ton of upside. But I'm going to say Kayshon Boutte, or Booty, however you pronounce it, is solid as well with upside. I think both these guys are solid this week.
I'm right there with you. Got to be encouraged by the targets, the air yards. Drake May was fine. Like, you're like, okay, well, it was against the Raiders, right? You were saying the Raiders are a terrible defense, and they aren't good. Are the Dolphins any better? It doesn't look like they are. I think both these guys are startable. And yeah, Booty, he's going to be a factor. Remember, this guy played for LSU. If he can make the receiver room in that program, he can definitely make it in the NFL. And now the Dolphins side. All right. Again, it's only been one game, but it could not possibly get any worse for Miami. So we got Tyreek Hill, who, as far as I know, is still there. And then Jalen Waddle. He did leave, by the way, with a shoulder injury. He did come back, so don't think he's going to be on the injury report. But do you actually want to start any of these guys in fantasy?
No, I don't want to start either of these guys in fantasy. I mean, if there's any silver lining here, it's that the Patriots played the most single high in week 1. But you look at it last year in the 2 matchups against the Dolphins, they played the 23rd fewest single high because teams run too high against them and say, dink and dunk us down the field, and that's not the Dolphins' strength. So my guess is they're going to play a ton of too high here. This is going to be another game for the Dolphins. I'm not going to tell you to sit these guys because I don't know why. I don't know why I'm not going to tell you to sit them. I'm just going to say flexes, but I honestly would sit them if it was my team.
I'm definitely sitting Waddle. I need to see something, anything here. Look, there's no reason to put him in your lineup as of right now. And the only reason I'll say Tyreek Hill as a flex, in case he happens to pop off a big play, in case he's actually fired up and motivated and wants to show the world that he's not done, in case he's trying to showcase himself for potential trade suitors. But that's it. Right now, the Jags and the Bengals, you've got a whole bunch of must-start receivers here, of course. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins still, and then BTJ. Yeah, let's just give them a pass for the first game of the season. They'll be fine. Now, Travis Hunter, you actually should feel pretty good about. I mean, he was getting more targets early and often compared to BTJ. So what do you think happens in this game?
I like Travis Hunter. You look at it last week, the Bengals gave up the 6th most points to the slot. And it's not like the Browns have some amazing slot wide receiver. Last year, they allowed the 9th most points to slot wide receivers. Travis Hunter pretty much plays out of the slot. Like you said, he actually led this team in targets. I don't know if he has a massive ceiling yet, but I think he has a very high floor. We know this guy has like the potential to take any play to the house. I'm going to say going into game 2, a little more, comfortable. He's going to be a solid start this week.
Yeah, honestly, the only thing I think that could hold Travis Hunter back is his quarterback. Trevor Lawrence was pretty off target on some throws. He tends to do that, but he also sometimes will make big plays. There's still potential here. It's only 1 week of the Liam Cohen era. It's the Bengals defense. I think he's a solid start. All right, now next up, this is going to be a tricky one. We got the 49ers at the Saints. And as soon as I say 49ers, you're probably thinking injury, and you're right. Okay, so Kittle is out. Juwan Jennings, no idea. He left the game. Not shockingly, we've gotten very little information here, so don't know if he's even going to suit up. And then now Brock Purdy out of nowhere is on the injury report. Not sure if he's going to play. This could change things pretty dramatically here. So on the one hand, Ricky Pearsall might have zero competition for targets, and on the other hand, he might have Mac Jones as his quarterback. What do we do?
Yeah, this is tough. This is one we're going to have to watch all week and see if we have a good feel if Purdy plays or not. I mean, but look, if Purdy plays, Pearsall has to be a strong start. We saw in that game when Kittle and Jennings went out how he finally, look, I'll be honest, we were very high on Ricky Pearsall, and I was getting very nervous watching that game. He had like 2 catches forever. And I'm like, oh man, he's gonna bust this week. And then Kittle and Jennings went out, and he kind of had a big game down the stretch. Should have had a touchdown. Reek Woolen made a great play, but Purdy also kind of floated it. So if Purdy plays, he's got to be a strong start. I mean, this is the Saints. Like, come on, Marvin Harrison and Kyler Murray just torched them. He's got to be a strong start. If it's Mac Jones, I think he's still startable because, again, it is the Saints. And look, BTJ was good with Mac Jones last year, but I'll say only solid if it's Mac Jones.
Everything you said, I mean, like I was still really high on Pearsall. Last week, didn't think Jennings would be much of a factor. Didn't assume he would get hurt, but also not surprised. Yeah, with Purdy, if he's good to go, strong, almost just say I can't say I have to, but I really want to start Pearsall. With Mac Jones, you can't be as confident, but I still think he's at least your wide receiver 3 in most 12-team leagues. Now, when you think injuries, you also probably think Chris Olave. And he was basically in and out of the blue tent all last week. Think he's good to go. Can't guarantee it, but You got Olave. You still also have Rashid Shaheed, but you also still have Spencer Rattler at quarterback facing the Niners. Are you interested at all?
I can't say I'm super interested. I'll say this. At least Olave had a floor last week. I mean, it took 13 targets for him to have 7 catches for 54 yards. We're talking about 7.7 yards per reception. This is like Wan'Dale Robinson territory here. But look, they might have to throw it a ton. If Brock Purdy plays with a healthy CMC, the 49ers should score points. They might have to throw it a ton again. So you can flex them, although I don't love it. And no, I'm out on Shaheed as long as it's Spencer Rattler.
I don't want to come across as like a Spencer Rattler apologist or closet Saints fan or anything like that. But remember, Rattler last year when he did play, he didn't have either of these receivers. He had almost nothing to work with. Turned out to be lame duck head coach. He wasn't that bad last week, right? He wasn't turning the ball over, making crazy bad throws or anything like that. So Olave, if he's getting the target volume like he did last week, he's always going to be worth a flex. And Shaheed could make that big play. I think he's also worth a flex. All right, now another divisional game. We got the Browns at the Ravens. All right, let's talk. Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, and Cleveland still with Joe Flacco there at quarterback.
Yeah, did not see Joe Flacco slinging it all over the field last week. I mean, Tillman did score, so that was nice. But, I mean, really, not a big passing game for the Browns last week. And that was the Bengals. Now it's the Ravens. I'm going to say both these guys are flexes. But I'll say this about Tillman. I actually like him more than Jeudy this week because has a higher targets per route run rate and a higher yards per route run rate versus man. And the Ravens played the 4th most man last week. So if I'm going to prefer one, it's going to be Tillman. But man, I did not see Flacco slinging it the way we hoped last week. Just flexes.
No, it was a little bit conservative, and it's funny because I feel like they were trying to just avoid those turnovers, and yet still had 2 interceptions. But those seemed like they were more on the receiver than the quarterback, didn't they? I'll just say this. After last week, even though Tillman had the touchdown, Jeudy didn't, but they had very similar stat lines. But I feel better about Tillman and a little worse about Jeudy. Jeudy just didn't get his hands on a couple of passes. I'm worried that we're seeing the old Jerry Jeudy again, but not shocked. But I think that this week, it's the Ravens. The Ravens are going to put up points. We know this. I think they're going to have to sling it a little bit more because remember, Joe Burrow just doesn't play well against Cleveland. This is just a thing. I think Lamar Jackson will be fine. I think they will have to sling it. I think they're both solid. Now for Baltimore, you saw Zay Flowers go off and Rashad Bateman do not much. Does that keep up this week?
I don't know if Zay Flowers will go off, but Rashad Bateman will probably do nothing unless he hits like a big touchdown. That's really all you're hoping here. If you put Bateman in your lineup, which I'm not going to do. The thing about Flowers, like, look, say what you want, Joe Burrow versus the Browns, but I mean, the Browns did a pretty good job against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins last week. But Zay Flowers is one of these guys, like, I can't ever really feel like I can sit Zay Flowers unless it's like the toughest of matchups. So he should be solid this week.
Yeah, don't like Flowers quite as much as last week. He's still solid, though. Always has that upside. Yeah, Bateman is just a sit, though. You know, like, it's not worth saying DeAndre Hopkins, you don't play him. Nobody really has DeAndre Hopkins. Even after that touchdown last week, nobody got him in fantasy, but he's going to be there. I think that eats enough into Bateman's target share and snap share that he's going to be a lot less relevant this whole season. All right, week 2 didn't take long. We got a revenge game on the head coaching side of things. Bears at the Lions. Let's see what Ben Johnson's offense can do against his former team. All right, so it seems like they want to spread the ball around, which is not too surprising. Okay, so DJ Moore, Rome Odunze now, Olamide Zaccheaus, who's occupying that slot role a lot. All these guys are factors, but how much of a factor you think they're going to be here?
Well, I'm not sure how much of a factor I'm going to say Zaccheaus is. Like, not ready to start this guy yet. Keep an eye on him. We'll see. Not ready to start him. I still think DJ Moore and Rome Odunze should both be solid this week. Look, Caleb mostly looked good. Not a lot of downfield shots, but he mostly looked good. But I think I prefer Odunze a little more this week because the Lions played the most man coverage last week, the most man last year. And Odunze actually is better versus man than DJ Moore was last year. But both these guys are still solid.
Yeah, I think we're going to need some more time to see exactly how this plays out, and things could change, but I still like them enough. This isn't a matchup that's going to scare me off. I know you said the Lions do have some good corners. That is true. I will just say they're probably going to have to pass enough to keep up with the Lions. So let's say solid. Zacchaeus, I can wait. I can sit him. Then for the Lions, you're still starting the Sun God. Yes, you are. JMO didn't have the, what do they call it, the bonus bag week or something. Yeah, he got paid. He didn't exactly celebrate in style with a big fantasy day. But you still got to like him overall in fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, I still like him long term, but look, the entire Lions offense tanked last week, so I mean, I guess we got to give them all a pass here, but I don't love his matchup this week. The Bears play a ton of zone coverage. Usually when the Lions play a very zone-heavy team, we see a Mon-Ra St. Brown have a bigger game, so I think this week I'm going to say Jameson Williams just a flex.
Well, I'll say again, that Packers defense is legit. What we saw, which I don't think is just going to continue, it's not a trend, is we saw a lot of short passes. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back, had 10 targets. The tight end, Sam Laporta, was next. They're going to start to go down the field more. Jameson's going to be part of that. So this isn't necessarily a smash spot for him, but I think he's always at least a flex. I think that's what he's this week. All right, this should be an interesting one. We've got the Broncos taking on the Colts. Let's see exactly how legit this Colts passing game is against Denver's defense. All right, but let's start on the Denver side. You got Cortland Sutton. You got Marvin Mims. What do you like here?
Cortland Sutton or nobody. I mean, Marvin Mims, Troy, I don't even know who the wide receiver 2. I don't even think Sean Payton knows who the wide receiver 2 is. I don't want any other Broncos wide receiver here. Last week I really liked Sutton. I call him a strong start. I'm going to bump him down to a solid start this week because I'm kind of on the fence here. There's like a part of me that thinks maybe new defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo is going to actually like make this a pretty good defense. And then there's a part of me that thinks like, well, maybe they just got to play the Miami Dolphins last week. But Sutton can always score. Bo Nix has to be better than he was last week, right? So I'll say solid.
Well, I probably should have been a little higher last week on Sutton. I'm going to be higher this week. I think it was basically Miami's offense. I've been saying this since throughout the preseason. I think this is what we're going to see in Miami. But anyways, the Colts, yes, they'll be better on defense, but Sutton is clearly the number one guy, like you said. I think he should be a strong start here. There's nobody who is really going to give him much resistance. Very fair to ask, is the Michael Pittman game that we saw from week 1 legit? Because he looked strong and fantasy relevant, but now, bad timing, I guess he's probably going to get the Surtain shadow.
Yeah, that's the problem here. Well, Downs is a sit. He only played 48% of the snaps. He's only out there in 3 wide receiver sets. Downs is a good player, but I don't understand people every year saying Downs is going to be until he gets in a situation where he's actually on the field enough. Probably not going to be fantasy relevant week to week. Pittman, on the other hand, I know you're going to see that big game last week and think maybe he's back, but it's Surtain. I mean, we didn't start Calvin Ridley last week for this reason. I get it. If you want to chase that game last week and you're like, I can't bench him after that, fine. I'll call him a flex, but I think he's a risky flex who could perhaps bust this week.
Yeah, it's funny because, we just assumed, and I say we, meaning the larger fantasy community, we all assumed Daniel Jones would just settle for those short passes to a guy like Downs, right? A slot receiver. But no, it's Tyler Warren, the tight end, who's getting all of those targets. Downs looks like he might be irrelevant if Warren continues the way he's going. Pittman, I think he will be good, just not this week. I mean, if we were down on Ridley last week against Denver, how excited can we be about Michael Pittman? I think he's barely a flex. Next up, we got the Panthers at the Cardinals. All right, so this Carolina offense didn't exactly put up a bunch of points like we thought they might against the Jags. But overall, Ted McMillan, I think it was a pretty impressive debut. Xavier Legette, all right, he might still have some work to do.
Yeah, and Ted State could have been a lot bigger. I've talked about it a couple times already this week. Not going to talk about it again, but I was very encouraged by what I saw. I mean, he's far and away the number 1 wide receiver in this offense already. And the Cardinals, okay, maybe it's not as good of a matchup as the Jags, but not going to scare me off him. I'm going to still say he's solid. I'll say you can flex Legette again. He did have 7 targets, but I mean, it could be another underwhelming game. I totally understand if you're like, no, I'm not ready to put this guy in my lineup yet.
Yeah, I'm barely hanging on to Legette as a flex option. In fact, I mean, look, it's week 2. You shouldn't need him. All right, I've changed my mind. Legette, don't start him. Tet, I think you should still start him. That big play upside is always going to be there. So let's go McMillan, solid. And I don't know if it's too early to say Marvin Harrison is making that year two leap, but had a nice game. Kyler Murray apparently was fine, so nothing to worry about there. So where do you put Harrison in this matchup? Panthers defense didn't look too overwhelming.
They didn't look too overwhelming, but at the same time, it's not like the Jaguars, lit them up through the air, but that was the Jaguars, so, gotta understand that. I will say, much more encouraging, a lot more catches over the middle this week for Marvin Harrison than we saw last year, where we basically saw none of those. That was very encouraging. It's another good matchup here. I don't know if it's quite as good as the Saints, but it's another good matchup. I'm going to say he's a solid start this week. A very solid start, though.
Well, here's what's good and bad about Marvin Harrison. This is exactly what I was kind of expressing throughout the preseason, the draft process. He's clearly the number one receiver here by far, but he's clearly the number two target here behind Trey McBride. Trey McBride's still getting those first three targets. Trey McBride's still getting the most targets, but Harrison is right there behind him. He looks good. Again, it's not him. It's just the way this offense operates. This matchup, I think he's got enough juice. I'll actually put him as a strong start. All right, Summit Talk, Eagles and Chiefs. You figure there should be a ton of fantasy goodness in this matchup. But now I don't know. We can't call A.J. Brown a must start after last week. There's no way. And then Devontae Smith, well, I mean, he was fine, but guess what? The Eagles are still a run-heavy team.
They're a run-heavy team. We don't know how healthy A.J. Brown is. I mean, we did see in the Super Bowl, they threw all over this Chiefs defense, and the Chargers just threw all over this Chiefs defense. But I still have my doubts. But I can't drop A.J. Brown too low. I'm still going to say A.J. Brown solid. Now, if he goes out there and lays another egg, all right, now we have real cause for concern where it's okay, maybe this guy's, not close to 100%. Devonta Smith is what Devonta Smith is. I kind of regret being as high on Devonta Smith last week as I was. I'm just going to put him in the flex tier. He could have a big game. He could do nothing. He could be okay. That's Devonta Smith.
That is Devonta Smith. He's always just kind of a high upside flex. Let's throw him in there again for this week. As far as A.J. Brown, again, with any player, you don't want to be reactionary. So just objectively speaking, there are concerns with AJB. I mean, not just the fact that he only got one pass last week, but what if he's not 100% healthy? That's a legit concern. The Chiefs are still a really good defense, and they're going to be in Arrowhead. And Trent McDuffie, one of the best corners in the league. He could be all over AJB. So I think he's right now a high upside flex as well. And then Kansas City, Xavier Worthy, out. Hollywood Brown, he definitely benefited. 10 catches, 99 yards, and it looks like he's still pretty much the only play in town unless you actually want to count Juju Smith-Schuster.
No, but I will say, don't sleep on Tyquan Thornton. He's like a slightly better MVS. He could always hit on that big play, but you shouldn't need to start him. Not starting Juju. I mean, Hollywood has to be a solid start, right? Look, Hollywood Brown, his role in this offense is a ton of targets, not a ton of air yards, but the targets matter, right? Racking up those targets matter. They don't really have anybody else. He's got to be solid.
Just through the fact that he is the number one guy there. And look, Travis Kelce didn't really do a whole lot, just that one touchdown, but he's not getting targeted like he used to, nor should he be. Yeah, Hollywood has got to be at least a solid play here. All right, it's time to talk Falcons at Vikings. All right, Falcons, another tricky team here. Drake London, they got that shoulder thing. They say day to day. You're going to have to definitely check up until game time, but if he starts, I still think you just play him. Darnell Mooney didn't play week 1. What if he returns in week 2? Do you risk it?
I don't think so. I mean, I will say if London is completely out and Mooney plays, sure. But it sounds like London is going to play. I mean, Drake London has had 12 or more targets in every game with Michael Penix Jr. so far. It's he only has eyes for Drake London and then maybe sometimes Kyle Pitts. So I'm not going to start Darnell Mooney.
No, I mean, only if somehow, which I don't anticipate happening, London is ruled out and Mooney is ruled in before the weekend. I think I have to at least consider him as a flex, but I don't think that's happening. So right now I'm just going to say he's on my bench. All right, and then the Vikings. All right, let's just start with this. Addison, yeah, you're not playing him. He's still suspended. Jefferson, it does not matter what he does. You are always starting Justin Jefferson, all right? You might have forgotten that Adam Thielen is on the Vikings because you didn't see a whole lot of him on Monday night. And yeah, there's also Jalen Naylor. What do you make of this?
Hard pass on both these guys. I mean, really, This was not the Vikings offense we hope to see in week 1 with JJ McCarthy. Like, Jefferson or nobody.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Jefferson or nobody until Addison comes back. And then the first of 2 Monday night games, it's going to be Tampa Bay facing Houston. All right, everyone's been waiting for this. Emeka Egbuka, already the best receiver in the NFL? Question mark. And then there's Mike Evans.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think we're gonna see something very similar to what we saw last week. I mean, Derek Stingley Jr. is probably gonna spend a lot of time on Mike Evans this week. Mike Evans will still be fine. You're still starting Mike Evans. He can still always score a touchdown. But I actually think Egbuka is gonna have the bigger game. You look at it last week. I talked about it already. Puka played the most snaps ever out of the slot of his career last week, 44%, and it helped him have a big game in a tough matchup. Egbuka last week, 45% of his routes out of the slot. I think Egbuka is going to have another big game. I'm going to call both these guys solid, although Egbuka is actually the one I want between the two.
I think you're completely right here. You know, the Texans, generally speaking, a pretty good pass defense. They got Derek Stingley Jr., really good corner. He's going to be probably on Evans a lot more than Egbuka based on how they line up. We might see it again, right? We might see Egbuka outperform Evans, but I think they're both at least solid starts here. Then the Texans receiver room, kind of a mess here. I mean, look, you're still starting Nico. I know it was bad week 1. You got to play him though. Remember, Christian Kirk still out. So, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, anybody?
No, you know what was really discouraging about last week, and I still like Nico, and I think Nico is going to be fine, but he targeted like 10 different players, 8 different players. Like, why are you throwing it to so many different guys? Like, is Nico not open? Like, he's never open? Like, throw the ball to Nico. Forget these other guys. No, I'm not starting any other Texans.
Yeah, sometimes these teams get too cute trying to involve their new players, you know. It's like we want to show that we have more depth now. We're adding. We're not just one receiver. But you should still throw it to your best receiver. I think they'll do that more, but it doesn't matter. Look, nobody besides Nico. It's like we said with Vikings. Jefferson or bust, it's Nico or bust here. Then week 2 will end with the Chargers at the Raiders. All right, so now got a lot of receivers here in LA to talk about. Ladd McConkey, it's pretty good. Keenan Allen still looks pretty good. Quentin Johnston even looked good. Scored twice last week. So what do you do with all these choices?
I think they're all pretty good starts this week. I'll start with Ladd. I know it wasn't a big game for Ladd, and it's frustrating to see like QJ get 2 touchdowns, Keenan get a touchdown, and Ladd not get any, but this week, Ladd might be the only guy that scores and suddenly everything is right in the world. Ladd still led this team in routes, first read percentage. He's going to be fine. I'm going to put him as a strong start this week. I'll say Keenan's the one I'm maybe like, I think he's fine. I'm going to put him at solid, but I just feel like more of a floor play here. I mean, only 78 air yards last week. Like, there's not a ton of upside here without a touchdown, but he should give you a nice high floor, so he's solid. And then I'll say this week, QJ, I like him again. I'm going to put him in that flex tier because he didn't get a ton of targets, but he got a ton of air yards. Look, and we just saw Kayshon Boutte, or Boutte, however you pronounce it, last week, have a big game on the outside against his defense. Why can't he have another one? So an upside flex play.
Yeah, I mean, this really is a great matchup for all the receivers, but I don't think I'm going to let week 1's point totals sway me too much from how I see this receiver room shaking out. Ladd still going to be a strong start. I think Keenan Allen has shown he is a solid start. And like you said, QJ is a flex with upside, but don't expect 2 touchdowns again. All right, now the Raiders, not quite as deep at receiver, at least not yet. So let's just talk Jacoby Myers here. Came away with a pretty good stat line in week 1.
He did. You got to feel good if you got Jacoby Myers. Not only did he have a good stat line, the Raiders led all teams in neutral situation pass rate. They were like the pass heaviest team in the NFL last week, even though they were winning. Jacoby Myers, I know Chargers, not a smash spot like last week, but I don't care. Jacoby Myers, solid this week.
As disappointed as Ashton Genty owners are with his stat line, yeah, the passing game was definitely encouraging here. I don't even want to mention necessarily the Brock Bowers injury. It sounds like it's nothing, but what if? I mean, if he misses time or if he's not 100%, just more targets for Myers. I think he is definitely a solid play here. Those are all the receivers you need to know about for week 2. Don't forget, got you covered. Running back, quarterback, tight end, everything you need to know to win. It's in this playlist.